Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Supreme King Zark Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for post-Legacy of Destruction. We got the new Supreme King Zark Synchro Universe in the latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster Pack. Very happy with the ease of being able to summon out this card that becomes Supreme King Zark while on the field, just being able to summon it out with a very easy level 12 Synchro summon that you can do with the many different, pendulum monsters that we run in the deck, needing one tuner and one non-tuner Dark Pendulum monsters, or one or more Dark Pendulum monsters. So with this summon, we have access to a plethora of other summons in the deck revolving around Supreme King Zark Synchro Universe, and wanted to update the deck with this new support and for some of the other changes I made since Age of Overlord. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and get started with the main deck monsters. For the Supreme King monsters, we're running 3 copies of Supreme King Dragon Darkworm. If it's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. And if it's in the graveyard, you control no monsters, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Darkworm once per turn. So you have an easy special summon from the graveyard, which you can set up with cards like Dragon Shrine, Foolish Burial, you name it, and then not take up your normal summon for your other Pendulum monster, but getting a search for one of your other cards, being your Supreme King Gate scales, can help to set up the higher scales we use to be able to summon back Supreme King Zark onto the field as well. For our other Supreme King Dragon monster, 2 copies of Supreme King Dragon Lightworm. If this card's normal or special summon, you can add 1 face-up Supreme King Dragon or Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. Then immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro Summon or Exceed Summon 1 Supreme King Dragon monster. And if a face-up Pendulum monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect while this card's face-up in your extra deck, you can add this card to your hand. So, recycle power, but it's also your tuner that you can use. So you just need the 2 Darkworms and 1 Lightworm to be able to Synchro Summon out your Supreme King Dragon Zark Synchro Universe onto the field, or any of the other tuners we run as well. But the restrictions with some of the other Pendulum Magician monsters we run makes the Lightworm one of the better cards to use for summoning out our Synchro Universe Zark. Also, the 1 copy of Supreme King Gate 0 and the Supreme King Gate Infinity, having more of the high scale with Infinity to be able to summon back our level 12 Zark monsters onto the field, and Supreme King Gate 0 just being another search off of the lower scale to use as well. For more of the setup for our Supreme King cards, we also run 3 copies of Supreme King Gate Magician. This card also counts as a Supreme King Gate monster as well, so being able to add that off of Darkworm makes it a much more viable search as well. If you have a Supreme King Gate card in your Pendulum Zone, except for Supreme King Gate Magician, you can send 1 Pendulum Dragon Exceeds, Synchro, or Fusion monster from your hand or extra to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand, so giving you that resource as well as setting up that monster as well from your hand or extra. And since the other Pendulum Dragon cards always count, you can send these cards off as the cost, giving you more of those resources to then be able to summon our original Zark back using our Astrograph or Chronograph Sorcerer. And then for the Pendulum Magician support, 3 copies of Harmonizing Magician, just another great tuner because it can grab another Pendulum Magician resource onto the field after it is Pendulum Summon. It's restricted for what you can summon with it, and it's also banished when it leaves the field, but still, you can use it for an Exceed play, getting around that play, and just being much more searchable with some of the other cards in the deck. We also run 3 copies of Wisdom Eye Magician. You can destroy this card in your Pendulum Scale to set up another Pendulum Scale, so you can grab your other Pendulum Magicians using this card, and have this card in the extra deck as another resource, because then we can use 2 of our cards in the field to then summon out a Link monster. This most of the time being our Beyond the Pendulum, because we'll get another additional search, and then being able to summon back the cards we destroyed off of Wisdom Eye Magician, with the lower numbers for our Pendulum Magician cards being the 1 of copies of our Purple Poison, Black Fang, White Wing, and Double Iris, all of them counting as the needed Dimension Dragons to be able to summon out the Pendulum Synchro, Exceeds, and Fusion Dragons respectively, and having the send option to send with Supreme King Gate Magician to special summon, while also setting up some of the lower 1-ofs in the deck as well. We also have some spells that can search out these cards, including our Star Pendulum Graph and also our Pendulum Call, so being able to grab these 4 cards, which will then be used for the Supreme King Zark summon. And then also just the 1 Oath Dragon Magician as another Pendulum Magician search, another low scale, and also one that can just add back our Pendulum cards that are Magicians in the face-up extra deck back to our hand. For the other Sorcerer cards, 1 copy of Astrograph Sorcerer, having the Search and Destruction special summon off of this card. The 3 copies of Chronograph Sorcerer. These cards are also important for being able to utilize the Banish play to summon out Supreme King Zark onto the field, and the 1 Time Gazer Magician to use with the special summon of Chronograph Sorcerer. And then the only other non-Zark related or pendulum monster we run is the 3 copies of Skullcrabat Choker. Just having a search for a Performapal, Magician, Pendulum, or Odd Eyes monster gives us more search for plenty of the other cards of the deck, since Supreme King Gate Magician also counts as a Pendulum Magician monster as well. And also the search for any of our other setup using those other monsters as well. For the spells, I run 3 copies of Wings of Light. During the main phase, add 1 Supreme King Dragon or Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, or if you control Supreme King Zark, you can special summon it instead. Once again, just another resource to grab, searching out the needed monsters to be able to summon out our main go-to boss monster in the deck, with our lower one-ofs being the 1 copy of Star Pendulum Graph, more search if a face-up Magician Pendulum it leaves the monster zone or pendulum zone, 1 Pendulum Evolution. You can shuffle 1 Pendulum monster from your hand to the deck to add 1 Pendulum monster with 2500 attack and a different name from your deck, giving us, once again, search for some of the specifics, this time being our Supreme King Gate Magician, but also being able to search out cards like our Astrograph Sorcerer, and also the 1 copy of Dragon Shrine, and the 1 copy of Pendulum Call, more Dragon setup with our Supreme King Gate monster, the Pendulum Call, discarding, and potentially being able to discard our Supreme King Gate Darkworm to add, and then just special summon it back from the graveyard, and also the 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Once again, search for our Supreme King Gate Dragon to the graveyard, with the last of our spells being 2 copies of Duelist Alliance. If there's a card in the Pendulum Zone, it can even be in your opponent's Pendulum Zone. You can add 1 Pendulum or Pendulum Monster or Pendulum Spell Trap from your deck to your hand. So you have Pendulum Graph Search, our Double Iris Magician counting as a Pendulum Graph. Plenty of search options with this card in the deck as well, but most of the time we're adding our spell search like Pendulum Call or our other one of Pendulum Graph to hand. And then the only trap we run in the deck is the 1 Soul of the Supreme Celestial King. Tribute 1 Spellcaster Pendulum with 2500 original attack. Fusion summon 1 Supreme King Zark from your extra deck by banishing the above materials from your hand, deck, extra deck, and or graveyard, but negates effects unless at least one of each of your Pendulum Dragon Xyz, Synchro, and Fusion Dragon monsters are currently banished, so that can be made. Done with the special summon play of this card and our other Pendulum monsters to then just grab Zark onto the field much faster also. And then moving on now to the extra deck, run the 1 main new Zark monster, which is Supreme King Zark Synchro Universe. With its Pendulum Scale effect, you can tribute 1 Supreme King Dragon or Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster to special summon this card. You can only use this effect of Synchro Universe once per turn, and if this card's name becomes Supreme King Zark while on the field, after damage calc, if this card is destroyed by an opponent's monster or by battle, or when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon up to 2 Supreme King Dragon monsters from your deck, extra deck, and or graveyard in defense position, and if this card's in the monster zone, is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can place it in your Pendulum Zone. So being able to special summon 2 Supreme King Dragon monsters, you have more options with getting those resources onto the field to then be able to use them to summon out some of our other Synchro monsters after you summon out our big Zark boss monster. That includes our Supreme King Dragon Clearwing, which we run the 1 copy of, the 1 copy of Ignister Prominence, the 1 Starlight Red Dragon Archfiend, the 1 Draco Berserker, having more level 8 options to go into, and also with being restricted with what we had on the ban list with Borreload Savage and also Baron de Fleur now being banned. For our fusions, 1 copy of the original Zark and 1 of the new Odd Eyes Archray Dragon as well, still being treated as Supreme King Zark, but also must be fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing a level 12 Dark Supreme King Zark, which can also be done with the new Synchro monster as well, since it just says attributing a level 12 Supreme King Zark, so this counts it as well on the field to then tribute and special summon this card from the extra deck. And then for our Link monsters, the 1 copy of Beyond the Pendulum, the 1 Exceed the Pendulum, the 1 Zephyr Metaltron, and the 1 SP Little Knight, with our Xyz monsters being 1 Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion, 1 Magister Paladin, 1 Time Star Magician, and the 1 Zeus to be able to overlay on top of them. As for some of the go-to plays in the deck, as I said, Supreme King Dragon Darkworm definitely does help to set up a good variety of the plays we can do in the deck, but Wings of Light giving us search as well is another added benefit. So depending on if you have to normal summon out Supreme King Dragon Darkworm, or if you have one of the cards to set into the graveyard, you can activate your Dark Shrine or Dragon Shrine, setting it to the graveyard, and then you have the special summon back onto the field. This will then allow you to add to your hand your Supreme King Gate card as well to help set up your scales. You then have the initial play of your Wings of light as well to, during the main phase, add 1 Supreme King Dragon monster. So you can add your Light Worm to your hand off of this card as well. And then what comes down to this play also is you have the add back power of your Light Worm to go into and utilize as well. Or you can go for the initial play if you have more of your Pendulum Scales set up to be able to use. All you need is, after having this search, 1 additional card for your Pendulum Scale and 1 additional level 4 monster as well to be able to summon out. So with that play in mind, you just need the Dark Pendulums, which you have a good majority of the deck. You'll set the scale. Having your 1 monster on the field, you'll then Pendulum summon the rest from your hand, and then from there you have the Tuner and the non-Tuner Dark Pendulum monsters to be able to then use for the Synchro summon of our Supreme King Zark Synchro Universe on the field, which you can have for its burn damage, or you contribute it to get the Archray Dragon out on the field. One of the more easier ways to utilize and summon Zark out onto the field with this new Synchro monster. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.